Welcome to the Inspired Business Leaders Podcast, brought to you by Inspire Wealth, bringing you interviews with top business professionals, empowering you to understand our current business climate and the successes and struggles other business professionals have overcome. Here's your host, Nick Bour.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inspired Business Leaders Podcast. This is your host, Nick Bour, brought to you by Inspire Wealth. Today we have with us NaTanya Dowell, who is an entrepreneur and business owner, owns and operates a virtual services agency for individuals that are doing virtual assistance or needing virtual assistance, as well as she also owns a coaching and consulting business. So, NaTanya from Dowell Virtual Services and Dowell Coaching and Consulting, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, NaTanya, I always start with let's kind of start with your background and then kind of what brought you to entrepreneurship.
Okay, so my background is largely in the field of higher education. That was the bulk of my corporate career. I was in higher education in executive roles for about 15 years. In my last role, I was the director of a satellite campus for a major university here in Atlanta, Georgia. And to make a long story short, what led me into my entrepreneurship journey was COVID, to be frankly, just to be frank, it was COVID, the pandemic. I was at a thriving university, like I said, working as a director over that campus where I oversaw everything. So, I had a lot of experience in management and administration and, just overseeing operations and things of that nature. And when COVID hit, we started seeing our enrollment decline. Recruitment efforts were kind of strained. And our university made the decision to just close the satellite campuses that we had here in Atlanta. So I had already begun work, doing entrepreneurship efforts on a part-time basis. I had actually opened an e-commerce brand, just doing little small things to make extra income to kind of just, get myself out there. But at the point that they decided to close our campuses, it was very abrupt, no warning. We were called into a meeting one day, and literally all of the satellite campuses were pretty much let go on that day. So I found myself very frustrated, to say the least. Very frustrated, and just trying to figure out what my next move was. And, I had spent a lot of years investing in my education to move up in the field that I was in. And, believe it or not, I had experienced this particular thing more than once in my career in higher education. So I had a lot of thinking to do, and, I'm a faith-driven person, so I began to kind of praying about it and just really seeking what my next step should be. And as I was seeking that, I kept hearing to myself, your gift will make room for you. And my gift has always been administration. It has been management, operations. It has been, being able to help individuals see themselves in a greater place than where they are, and realizing that once they actually invested in themselves, that no one could ever take that away from them. So, I began to just kind of put all of my skills together and figure out the best way to utilize them, which, made me start thinking about the virtual assistant space. I had begun to see it a lot, see people doing that. So I began to kind of map that out. And in addition to, I recognized how hard it was to build a business as a person working full-time because, I was dabbling into part-time entrepreneurship while I was still working full-time. I realized how hard that was and how much time it took, how many hours and how many sacrifices, I had to make to try to get that off the ground. So I decided to focus my energy on, just helping other people that were in the exact same position I once was and help them to excel in their businesses with, utilizing my skills as someone that, had a lot of experience with administration, systems, operations, and, back office and all of these things. So that was, pretty much the birthing of Dowell Virtual Services to start, helping entrepreneurs to really thrive in their businesses so they didn't have to spend all of their time working on their businesses and, could focus more of their energy operating in their zone of genius. So that's pretty much how I got started. My agency took off rapidly. I grew to six figures really, really quickly in the business and saw, just the potential to be able to help others. At the same time, I started missing that component of just empowering other people that I had in higher education. I had also, invested time in getting certified as a transformational coach and doing all of these things while I was still in higher education. And, I was like, okay, let me help others do what I am now doing, as people started reaching out to me. So I decided to go ahead and birth the other arm of my business, which is the coaching and consulting firm. And, that is thriving as well. And so here we are now.
Well, that's great. I've heard a lot of stories over the last few years, and a lot of unfortunate situations where people were forced into entrepreneurship. It's great to hear that even though doing it on a part-time basis, you had already started something, and the fact that you're growing and thriving in your business. I think a lot of people are realizing because of the digital age that you can use virtual assistants and you can use and grow with them. So I think that's a big thing that I think a lot of business owners, if you would have asked them 5 years ago to use a virtual assistant or using some level of it, they would have been like, how the heck am I going to do that? Why does that make any sense?
Right.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. And, I'm happy to hear that, that you're growing and you're doing things, that obviously you are already starting to do, but now you've obviously expanded, you're growing. So I think that's great. And I think there's more need for these types of services. And I think it will continue to grow. So help me understand. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'm so sorry.
No,
I think the pandemic, really awakened this era that we're in, with the digital age. And, it was starting prior to that. But like you said, 5 years ago, people wouldn't have thought that it would be possible to really grow your businesses with, using someone like me or using my agency. However, more and more people are starting to build online businesses, and more people are starting to kind of move away from that traditional brick and mortar type of entrepreneurship style business. And more people are starting to move away from corporate careers just because of, what happened during the pandemic. Like for someone like me, I honestly felt that I was in an industry that had security, but after experiencing that more than one time, and then, the last time it happening so abruptly to the point where, I had to deal with, as the leader of that particular site that I was at, and, dealing with the tears and the frustration of, parents who had children to take care of, and without notice, their livelihood was taken away, or seeing students now that had come to depend on us displaced, or having to now go online when that was not necessarily their initial option, or faculty, kind of dealing with the same frustrations. Now we are in this space where people have been forced to kind of shift their thinking to move into this digital space. So, and, it's not always easy. There's a lot of growing pains when you're trying to build. So having someone like me and my agency there to help you that already has the expertise takes a lot of the pressure off, so that you can do, people that use us can do what they need to do to operate at their highest and make the type of revenue they want to make, instead of, doing all of the back office and trying to make sure everything is running properly. Like, that's what we're here for. And I definitely see that is of great benefit to business owners.
Yeah, and I think that makes a ton of sense. I think there's a lot of business owners out there that, in the beginning, they're doing a lot of things themselves and wearing multiple hats because they almost have to. But I think they realize when they make that investment, whether it's a virtual assistant or whether it's a coach, to help them, give them strategies and give them processes and help them automate some of the things that they need done day in and day out. I think they realize that it takes a huge weight off their shoulders, and it really can help them focus on growth and what they do best.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you for that. So help me understand mindset shifts. Obviously, when someone goes from a corporate job or like a full-time, type of, you're working for the man per se or the woman per se, what mindset shifts do you think that people have to make to go from that to being a business owner? What does that look like?
Right. Well, there are quite a few, but there are like some really big ones that I see people struggle with right now. And one of those is going from the mindset of someone kind of directing and telling you what to do to the point of you actually being responsible for what you need to do and desire to do. And even though, I see a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs now say that is what they desire, like they desire to do things on their own time. They desire time freedom. They desire, to be able to kind of move how they want to move. Sometimes it's really hard for them to transition to really being their own boss, and to transition to being their own boss with structure and discipline, because, when you are trying to build a business, it's not one of those things that you really kind of just go with the flow with. Like, you really have to kind of have a plan and have some structure there so that you can see things begin to progress in your life and in your business. However, sometimes when we go from, especially if we take a leap of faith and just, jump right into it, we go from that structure of having to clock in and being accountable to someone to, at some point, not being accountable to anyone except for yourself. And oftentimes you don't know how to be accountable to yourself if, the only thing you've done was work for someone else. And so that's one of the biggest mindset shifts I see, to have a great need for people that desire to go from a corporate job to being an actual business owner. And then also, there's a big mindset shift around finances. Like, when you are going to become an entrepreneur, versus, depending on that weekly paycheck or biweekly paycheck or monthly paycheck or whatever it is. I see oftentimes people struggle with being able to let go of the ideal of, just having the security blanket of the paycheck, and oftentimes will want to hold on to that security blanket and, sometimes not allowing themselves to really soar in the way that they can because, they're still so invested in the security of that, monthly paycheck or biweekly, weekly paycheck or however it comes, to the point to where they won't put enough energy and time into actually growing their business. And then once the business is there, actually just putting themselves in a place to where they're actually starting it right just from the beginning. I hear so many people just say, okay, just start, just get out there. But the reality is, and it was the same for me, the reality is, when you're going from, a 9-to-5 job to where, this is all you have done and you have always known exactly when those checks are going to hit, you can depend on them like clockwork, to becoming a business owner where things rise and fall on you. You are now the leader of everything, including revenue, bringing in revenue and leads and, all of that, and the income fluctuating. If you are not going into it with the right mindset and with the right tools, with the right things in place, it's so easy to get frustrated because maybe you're not managing what you have coming in correctly. Maybe you don't have things set up for your business correctly. Maybe you are commingling funds because you don't know any better. That requires a great deal of, shifting in our mindset to realize, that things are just going to be different, and not different in a bad way, just different. And that as the business goes, the financials are going to grow, the revenue is going to grow. And, we just need to be prepared from the beginning. And, I often tell people, I have a business coach as well, which helped me, tremendous. And sometimes with, when you are starting out in a new venture, it's worth the investment for someone to kind of help you along the way so that you can avoid some of those pitfalls. But that in itself, requires a mindset shift because, outside of formal education, most people are not used to investing in themselves by way of a coach that's going to help them build something and not necessarily just doing something for them. I see a lot of people struggle with that as well. So I think I covered 3, mindset shifts there that I see as the biggest mindset shifts that I think people desiring to go from corporate to being an entrepreneur really, really need to be mindful of.
Yeah, you hit on one that I deal with all the time with new entrepreneurs. From the financial aspect, it's a very hard mindset shift to get that paycheck consistently to now. Wait a second, I'm not going to have that, and it's on me to make sure I'm driving revenue. Well, yeah, there's a completely different mindset shift in that. So that's really important. And I will tell you, even for me, that was not easy to do initially, when I started off on my own. But you realize, if you're really going to do this, that you have to make that shift. You have to say, look, this is all on me now. I'm not accountable to anyone but myself. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and as you bring on staff, then you have to start realizing, now, wait a second, I'm not just responsible for myself. I'm responsible for them and their families. So that's something that, not everyone always looks at, not evenly, but realistically, to where they're saying, hey, wait a second, I now have to make sure that family is okay, and that that individual is doing not only what they need to do, but also growing, helping you grow the business because of the value they're adding. So I think it's important to really look at this as twofold. NaTanya, you have two separate businesses that help small business owners and entrepreneurs in different ways, but they also coincide if you use them correctly. Meaning, yes, you have the Do Well virtual services, which if you're growing and you realize, hey, I probably need a part-time person to do administrative type things, it's probably in today's age a heck of a lot easier to hire a virtual assistant part-time than it is to hire someone in person part-time. So I think that A is how to do that, how to leverage that, how to make sure that you're taking advantage and using that in the appropriate way to not only support your current revenue and your current business, but also help grow. And then you've got your coaching business that I think is so important. And I will tell you, even personally, I obviously talk to a lot of people that I trust or I consider mentors in my industry on the financial planning side. But I will also tell you that I never really hired a formal coach until probably about 6 months ago, maybe a little longer. And my coach is actually a former, he owned his own practice. In not far from me, so even in Michigan, which is also even better in my mind. But he's great. I mean, not only can he give me insight on things that worked and didn't work for him, but also, hey, things to avoid, things to watch out for. You know what? This works well. Go do this. Like, those are things that I think make a heck of a lot of sense. But for some reason, business owners don't always like to admit that they need help, or that a coach could really help get them to the next level. They think they can do it themselves, and I'm not saying they can't, but they need to look at things a little differently and a little more open-minded.
Absolutely. I think, just to touch on that a little bit, I think, sometimes, people may hear stories that, of situations that didn't go so well, and they internalize that to, that they may possibly experience a similar instance, if they get a business coach or, have a consultant to come in and look at their businesses. But the reality is that, a lot of times it is just the fear of the unknown. It is fear of the unknown. It is those what ifs that keeps business owners from actually seeking out a business coach. That what if it doesn't work for me? Like, I hear it all the time. Like, what if this doesn't work for me? What if, I invest and I spend this money and I don't get the outcome? What if, I can't get the clients I'm looking for? All of these what ifs. And is the reality is the fear of the unknown. On the flip side of that, sometimes it's a fear of success as well, because it's like, if I get in here and, it is successful and, my coaching period is over, or I am successful and now I have to continue at this caliber of operation as I have been going, then what am I going to do? It's like all of these internalized fears that we have accumulated over our lives for whatever reason. It could have been other things that we've experienced, other people's experiences that have, kind of taken form within us, that have caused us to just become stagnant and fearful of moving forward. And unfortunately, the only way we're going to get beyond that and start seeing the type of success we want to have is really to make a shift. It goes back to the mindset shift and to be willing to overcome the fear of the what if, because the what ifs are always going to be what ifs until you decide that they're not. Like, no one can make that decision for you. You have to decide. A what if I fail is always a what if I fail until you prove that you're going to succeed. And, success is relative. It depends on what your definition of success is. And if you're defining it, then you can achieve it. So, I think that that's a huge challenge. And, as you talk about, business owners think that they don't need it, you never want to appear as if you don't have the answer, or as if you're not the expert at what you do. But the reality is that there's always someone else that knows a little bit more than you do that can help you avoid pitfalls, that can help you, avoid the challenges that they've already faced so you don't have to face them. I just think it's essential. Like, it has been such a wonderful thing in my life, and I would not be where I am right now if I had not chosen to invest in myself. And I'll be honest, I was scared when I first got a business coach because I was making a big investment and I had not done it outside of formal education.
Yeah.
So I can definitely relate to the fears, to the mindset struggles that was there, like, going back and forth, I'm going to do it. Oh, no, I'm not going to do it, and I literally, when I made the decision, I had to do it quickly because I was going back and forth. And then once I did it, I was like, oh, my God, what have I done?
Right. For sure. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of people, they've got they've got to get over some of their own fears, but B, like you said, I think success is really defined by you. Like what is your success to you? And that's different for everyone. I mean, it really is. So I think that's always a tough one. And I think it's relative to the individual. So I think that, some of the mindset shifts you shared, some of the other things we talked about with just mistakes that can be made initially and that type of thing. I think those are all really, really important things to consider. And I think that it's so important that, us as entrepreneurs realize that, yes, we do know certain things and we can help in a lot of different areas, but there are areas that it's so crucial to have someone that's coaching or mentoring you that can really help you, give you insight, things you may not be thinking of.
Absolutely.
So no, I think a lot of the things you said have been great. NaTanya, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and, help me, NaTanya, if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you and talk to you either about the virtual assistant services or the coaching and consulting, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, they can definitely follow me on social media. On Instagram and Facebook, I do have 2 separate platforms for the agency and the coaching. For the coaching, if you're interested in possibly starting your own virtual assistant agency, or you may already be a VA and just need help with scaling, you can follow me at life_with_NaTanya D. And for the agency, it is Dowell Virtual Services. So I would love to connect with you. Also, if you're just better with, possibly email, you can email us at support@Dowell Virtual Services.
Great. No, I think that's great. I think some of our listeners and some of the other people out there can definitely benefit from having a conversation with you around what their goals and objectives look like. So, again, I want to take a minute and say thanks so much for coming on with us and just sharing some of your story. So, this again is another episode of the Inspired Business Leaders Podcast, brought to you by Inspire Wealth. I'm your host, Nick Bour. NaTanya, again, thanks so much, and appreciate all the input, and hope to stay in touch and talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Inspired Business Leaders Podcast. brought to you by Inspire Wealth. To learn more about the topics mentioned on today's show, or to listen to past episodes, visit www.inspiredbusinessleaderspodcast.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.